So here let us go to the introduction, that is combustion and flame. If you go for the introduction, if you are going for the introduction, here we can suppose, for example, your burning of candle is the first example. This is first example. Examples, if we take some examples I would like to give: burning of candles, then LPG gas, LPG gas for domestic cooking. Then we can take wood or charcoal burning. You can take then compressed gas, CNG in automobiles. Sometimes even if you take the food which we consume, taking the food which we consume, which we consume. So all these are different types of fuels. Burning of candle, here candle. So here in all these examples, here candle is a fuel. So this candle, actually it is a hydrocarbon, saturated hydrocarbon. Candle is a saturated hydrocarbon. Paraffin, we can call it as paraffin, which we call it as wax. Candle is nothing but wax. Wax is nothing but which contains saturated hydrocarbon, that is paraffin, that is wax. It can be acting as a fuel. Again, if we go for LPG means it's nothing but liquid petroleum gas. Also, it is acting as a fuel. Then if you go for wood and charcoal, also these are solid fuels. I can say that these are solid fuels. Liquid petroleum gas is a gaseous fuel. Again, candle is a solid fuel. It is a solid fuel. Then again, CNG, compressed natural gas, CNG. If you take, this is compressed natural gas. This is gaseous fuel. It is gaseous fuel. Then food which we consume, food also it's nothing but it's a kind of energy in the form of fuel. You can consider the food also as a fuel for carrying the various metabolic activities. Food or fuel also. Fuel is energy fuel in the form of various metabolic activities we carry out, and this is it. So now what is happening here is, what we are able to understand here is, what we need to understand here is, that means every fuel, it has to subject, we take whatever is the type of the fuel, whether if the fuel is whatever is the fuel, you take fuel, you can take any kind of fuel, whether the fuel is candle or whether the fuel is LPG. So whatever may be the fuel, whether it is candle or liquid petroleum gas or wood or charcoal or CNG, that is compressed natural gas, or that is fuel, that is in the form of that is food, fuel, energy. Here the fuel in the form of food. Food also it's a form of fuel. If you take food, for example, all these except the food, rest of all cases, if you take, all these needs a process called combustion. So what do you mean by combustion actually? How do you understand the term combustion? For example, if you take combustion is, suppose for example during Diwali crackers we take the magnesium ribbon, we can take the sticks, I mean magnesium ribbon sticks, and we just try to ignite little amount of heat for that stick, and you can see that automatically it catches fire, and it gives this sparkling effect. And like different crackers, they glow with different colors. So all that, what is happening here is, in all those cases, what we are finding is we are just trying to give little amount of heat by passing small amount of oxygen. So what is happening here is, if you go for combustion, here the meaning of combustion is, that is, how do you put in proper meaning the word combustion? Combustion is simply nothing but heating a substance in the presence of heating a chemical substance in the presence of oxygen, to liberate heat and also produce light. For example, if you take, for example, here if you burn the candle, for example, if you are taking candle, if you are burning the candle, if you burn a candle, if you want to burn it, you have to pass oxygen and you need to heat it. This word delta represents heat. This delta symbol represents heat. Then immediately you find that this candle gives, that is, light, and also it gives energy. That means it is subjected to combustion. Of course, candle is made up of a chemical substance, that is wax or paraffin. Similarly, if you go for liquid petroleum gas, yes, liquid petroleum gas contains hydrocarbons. It contains the hydrocarbons, saturated or unsaturated hydrocarbons. Again, these hydrocarbons, when they are subjected to oxygen, they produce the carbon dioxide plus water plus large amount of energy is released. Wood and charcoal, yes, wood and charcoal, both of them, they are a form of carbon. They are forms of carbon. So take this carbon solid and you pass oxygen gas and you heat it. When you heat, you find that small amount of heat which we supply, if you supply small amount of heat, it gives carbon dioxide gas plus it gives excess amount of energy, heat in the form of energy, and also light. That means it has to be ignited to certain minimum temperature. Any chemical substance, if it wants to participate in the combustion, it has to be heated to a minimum temperature called ignition temperature. Once it reaches the minimum temperature called ignition temperature, that chemical substance reacts with oxygen and immediately it forms the necessary compound, maybe in the form of carbon dioxide or carbon dioxide and water, or any other substance any other new substance it may release, and along with that it also produces heat and sufficient amount of light. Same thing applies for compressed natural gas. And if you take food, we can consider the food as fuel, because we can consider the food as a biofuel for us. It's like food. What are the food we take in the form of energy? Food in the form of energy in the form of fuel. We are trying to take food in the form of energy in the form of fuel. That means this food, when we consume, the food is the food which we take is always in the complex. It is present in the complex compounds form. These complex compounds or the elements or whatever which are present in the food, the carbohydrates, proteins, fats, whatever they are there in the food, these carbohydrates, proteins and fats, once they are consumed into our body it tries to break these complex compounds. That is, carbohydrates are broken down into simpler substances, proteins and amino acids also, they are broken down into simpler substances, and they are absorbed to the various parts of the body, and thus we get sufficient amount of energy, and with that energy we try to do the various metabolic activities in our daily life. So this is what you have to keep it in your mind when you take food as a fuel. So here, if you take the fuels as earlier what we have discussed here, fuels are of combustible fuels and non-combustible fuels. Combustible fuels are those fuels which supports the combustion. That means they allow the oxygen to pass through them, they chemically react with the oxygen, and they give light as well as energy. They produce large amount of heat as well as energy. So combustible fuels are those fuels which produce heat and light when reacts with the oxygen. And non-combustible fuels, if you take non-combustible fuels which do not do not produce heat or light, which do not produce heat or light when first of all it doesn't react with oxygen. Non-combustible fuels are those which does not react with oxygen. Even if it reacts with oxygen, there is no question of producing any kind of heat or light. So therefore we can simply say all non-combustible fuels are those substances or materials which do not produce either heat or light, or they never react with oxygen at all. So therefore we can just call them as non-combustible fuels. Now look at here, if you look at this table, we can easily differentiate which is combustible and non-combustible. For example, if wood is combustible fuel, then I can tick it as combustible. If it is non-combustible, that means if it is only combustible, just tick it as combustible and leave the non-combustible nature. Wood is combustible, so tick it as combustible material. Paper is combustible. Then iron nails, no, it is not combustible, it is non-combustible. Kerosene oil, yes, it is combustible. Then stone pieces, no, it is not combustible, so it should be non-combustible. Straw, yes, it is combustible. Charcoal, 100% combustible. Then if you go for matchstick, 100% it is combustible, very strongly combustible. Strongly combustible, I'll put 3 tick marks. Charcoal 2 tick marks. Okay. Kerosene oil double tick mark. Wood also double tick mark. I'll take strongly combustible. Matchstick, yes, strongly combustible. No, that is glass is non-combustible. So here I can use the word that is strongly combustible. Strongly combustible, very strongly combustible, and here strong combustible. So by looking at this, it is very clear that wood is an ideal choice, matchstick is an ideal choice, charcoal is an ideal choice, kerosene oil is an ideal choice to carry out the process of that is combustion. Suppose for example, and one important point, one small experiment what we can do here is, if you take a flat board like this, wooden plank, take a wooden plank and take a candle. If this is the candle, you can see the candle flame is glowing like this. That means surrounding this candle, you are finding that surrounding this candle, you are finding that a medium is there operating. This medium is air. So air contains oxygen. So this oxygen supports the combustion of the candle and it tries to give the flame. But if this candle is stopped, if this candle, the next stage, if this candle which is kept on the wooden plank, which is having a flame, if I am going to place a tumbler like this, that means you are protecting the candle from participating in combustion. The air which is present in the candle is stopped. So gradually this flame, this flame is going to be put off, and you find some smoke comes out. This is smoke, and the combustion stops. So from this experiment, it is proved that combustion always requires sufficient amount of oxygen. This oxygen allows the flame. This oxygen allows the paraffin which is present in the wax to continuously burn, and with that burning it gives the flame, and with that flame we are able to understand that it is able to give the energy as well as light along with the flame. So this is how the process of combustion takes place. Here the combustion process without a tumbler, without an inverted glass, or else inverted glass we can take, and this is wooden plank. This is the melted wax we can take. This is the melted wax. So this is a small experiment we can show in the form of the combustion. And not only this, apart from this, you can also show the combustion in matchsticks. If you take a matchstick, this matchstick actually, if this is the wood, this is a small piece of wood where this matchstick is filled with some composition like this. this is the knob. This is knob of the matchstick. This I can take it as matchstick. This matchstick actually contains red phosphorus. The composition of the matchstick contains red phosphorus, then potassium chlorate, then it is also filled with little amount of antimony sulfide and powdered glass. So here this matchstick, you can see the knob of the matchstick. This is the knob. This is a small knob like thing. This is knob. This is a chemical knob. Actually that knob is filled with the different chemicals. It's just like a scotch mixture which is just prepared in the form of a paste, and it is just put on the support of this small wooden stick. And in this wooden stick right now we are finding that there is a red phosphorus. The symbol of phosphorus is P. It is filled with the powdered potassium chlorate. This KClO3 is called potassium chlorate. Potassium chlorate contains potassium chlorate, and you also have some amount of the compound which we call it as Sb2S3. This is Sb2S3, we call it as antimony sulfide. Antimony sulfide. The symbol of antimony is TBm. That is why the symbol of antimony is Sb. Sb means TBm, antimony. Antimony. The symbol Latin name is TBm. So the symbol is Sb. So what is happening here is, this is powdered glass. So when this whole mixture comes into contact with the rough surface, then ignition temperature is created with the rough surface. This knob generates the ignition temperature with that spark from the rough surface. Particularly the red phosphorus which is present in the scotch mixture of the knob of the matchstick, it suddenly acquires the ignition temperature, and immediately this red phosphorus immediately this red phosphorus gets converted to white phosphorus. This white phosphorus goes and it ignites the potassium chlorate. This potassium chlorate finally goes and it ignites the antimony sulfide, and therefore suddenly you find that the fire comes out. Suddenly it catches fire, and you can see that the flame comes out from the matchstick. This flame will give you the heat and also light in the form of energy. So this is how. So this is a case of proving. We're just trying to prove the combustion. In the case of matchstick. So this is how. That means we have taken two experiments to prove that how the combustion occurs chemically and how it supports combustion. So once again, wood is a supporter of combustion. Then kerosene oil is a supporter of combustion, good supporter of a combustion. Of course, paper also it's a good supporter of combustion, but kerosene oil is much more good supporter of combustion. Then charcoal is a good supporter of combustion. Matchsticks also, they are good supporters of combustion. Then what are the substances which are not the supporters of combustion? Means they are non-combustible substances. Not the supporters of combustion. Yes, glass is not the supporter of combustion, so it should be non-combustible substance. Then you can go for stone pieces. Yes, stone pieces are not the supporters of combustion, so it should be a non-combustible substance. Iron nails, of course, it is not a supporter of combustion, because if you want to melt the iron, generally these pieces of iron or iron nails, they are used in industries, heavy industries, in the manufacture of steel and different mega structures. This iron compound, the iron metal is used. If you want to melt the iron, or if you want to make this iron to participate in the combustion, you need large amount of energy. That the ignition temperature, above the ignition temperature, which is not less than 2000 to 2500 degrees centigrade, if you heat, then this iron melts and it becomes red hot liquid, and at that red hot liquid we can say that it has participated in the combustion, but that is beyond our handling. So it needs a special mechanism to adopt such kind of technique. So that's why overall we can say under normal conditions, under low ignition temperature or below the ignition temperature, iron nail cannot participate in the combustion. That's why iron nail outright we can say that it is a non-combustible substance. Again, if you go for paper, it is combustible. Wood, it is combustible substance. So this table and these two experiments makes us to clearly understand what is the difference between the combustible substances and the non-combustible substances. So here the next part of the discussion is, that is combustible substances. Every combustible substance, characteristic features of combustible substances. Characteristics. So if you take combustible substances, the combustion fuels like, let me put it in this way, fuels like petrol, diesel, kerosene, cooking oil, of course wood, charcoal, whatever. If you take wood and charcoal, these are solid fuels, and of course petrol and cooking oil, all this comes under the liquid fuels. So whatever may be the case, every fuel, a fuel can be anything. The fuel can be a solid, it can be a solid fuel, it can be a liquid fuel, or it can be a gaseous fuel also. So every fuel, whether it is solid, liquid or gas, it depends on a temperature called ignition temperature. For example, if you take solid fuels like wood, charcoal, they require a very high ignition temperature. That's why they do not catch fire easily. Is my point of view. This is what we have to understand here. But if you go for, particularly if you go for liquid fuels, in particular, that is petrol, diesel, kerosene, they require very little amount of ignition temperature. They require low ignition temperature. Little amount of ignition temperature is sufficient. So there is a chance for them to catch fire easily. But however, if you maintain a constant temperature, for example, if you take small amount of, if you go to the rural area, because of the lack of the domestic cylinders supplied by the government, that is domestic cylinders contains liquid petroleum gas. Because of the lack of supply, the rural people even today in India, they depend on the cheapest liquid fuel, that is kerosene. So this kerosene, when it is maintained with a constant temperature of the constant ignition temperature, it cannot catch fire on its own. But however, intentionally, if you increase the ignition temperature on the kerosene oil, then automatically it may catch fire and there is a chance of explosion. But that never happens, because whatever the device in which we are trying to fill the kerosene oil, it is protected in such a way that it has a constant ignition temperature. With the help of that constant ignition temperature, it participates in combustion and it continuously burn. As it is burning, it gives the light as well as heat, and we try to consume it in the indirect form. Same thing applies for petrol and diesel also. The same thing is maintained. If that means petrol, diesel and kerosene, they have some fixed below ignition temperatures. That's why there is never such thing that they are going to explode by themselves. Until unless you intentionally increase the ignition temperature for this liquid fuels, then there is a huge explosion taking place. When the explosion takes place, the damage is irreparable. That's why these fuels, I can say, though they have low ignition temperatures, they have high calorific value. They are highly calorific fuels, I can say. Calorific fuels. They are high energy calorific fuels. So for example, then if you take, that is if you are going for the cooking oil, and but even with the cooking oil also, we can take the same reason. If cooking oil, if it has constant ignition temperature, it can only boil. It keeps boiling but there is no such explosion. Boiling takes place. These are called constant boiling temperatures, constant boiling liquids. But you don't expect any, explosion taking place on the cooking oil. Same thing here also. If you increase the ignition temperature, then there is a chance of explosion. Combustible substances, all the combustible substances, they have low ignition temperature, they are highly inflammable. Highly inflammable means they are dangerously explosive. So prevention has to be taken in such a way that they cannot explode under any circumstances. That's why if you see the petrol, particularly petrol, then diesel, then liquid petroleum gas, LPG, these are all stored in airtight containers. These are all stored in airtight containers, because when they come in contact with the oxygen, they directly or indirectly they participate in the combustion, and large amount of uncontrolled heat and energy in the form of light is emitted, and severe damage occurs. So because of this highly inflammable nature, suppose by chance if there is an explosion, that means if the fire explodes, these are called fire explosion. Suppose if there is a chance of fire explosion, then how to control the fire explosion? Fire explosion controlling activities. To control the fire explosion, we need fire extinguishers. To control the fire explosion, we need fire extinguishers. The commonly available fire extinguisher is, the first priority for the fire extinguisher is water. First is water, second is carbon dioxide, third, sometimes you can take even sodium bicarbonate, fourth, very rarely we are going to use carbon tetrachloride. We use water as a fire extinguisher because it immediately minimizes the ignition temperature, and it can douse the fire. Water can easily douse the fire, and it will not allow any further expansion. Carbon dioxide, yes, carbon dioxide is heavier than air. Carbon dioxide is heavier than air, so it sinks into the water. And prevents further combustion, because as long as the combustion is taking place which is not under control, that leads to the fire mishap, that automatically fire explosion takes place. So carbon dioxide is heavier than oxygen, that's why it can sink into the water and it will stop the fire mishap. This usage of carbon dioxide as a fire extinguisher is particularly we use in the seashores, because sometimes even the seas also they catch fire because of the oil spills. Once the oil spills are spread on the surface of the sea, then because of the high ignition temperature or because of the sudden temperature variations on the sea, sometimes the oil which is being explored in the sea, it catches fire. So they use this compressed carbon dioxide gas at high pressure, and they try to spray this carbon dioxide, or they send this liquid carbon dioxide into the water and they try to put off the flame. Yes, so sodium bicarbonate also, when it is used as a fire extinguisher, it can put off the fire. And carbon tetrachloride, this is very popular. It is stored in cans in indoor complexes. So all these are the different fire extinguishers which will be used for putting out the fire, or which can control the fire activities. So here the next part of the discussion is types of combustions types of combustions. In this you can take different types of combustions, that is slow combustions, then spontaneous combustions, rapid combustions, slow combustions, spontaneous combustions, rapid combustions, that is complete combustion, and incomplete combustions. So what is happening here is, if you go for slow combustions, it's a slow process. Slow combustion in the sense here, like what are the examples you can take for slow combustion? That is burning of wood, charcoal, then that is iron nails, etc. These needs lot of for these substances to subject them to combustion. They need large amount of ignition temperature. Frankly speaking, they need large amount of ignition temperature based on the amount of temperature which you are passing along with the oxygen. In fact, in all the combustions, compulsory you have to pass oxygen. Every substance, when it is subjected to combustion, compulsory you need to pass sufficient amount of oxygen along with the oxygen, and that is in the form of air. Either the substance has to get exposed to the air, or you need to pass separately sufficient amount of calculated amount of oxygen. This calculated amount of oxygen along with the specific ignition temperature can classify the combustion into various types, like slow combustion, rapid combustion, incomplete and complete, so on and so forth. So for example, if you're taking iron nail, it takes a lot of time for it to get rusted. That is, iron nail, if it wants to participate in combustion, it needs oxygen, but this oxygen coming in contact with the iron takes a lot of time. It is a very slow process. And this process ultimately leads to the formation of rusting. But rusting is a very slow process, so we can definitely say that the combustion is a very slow process. That is slow combustion process. All these are the best examples where we can take the combustion process which involves without apparent application, without apparent application of cause. If there is a fire and heat and energy produced, then that leads to spontaneous combustion. The best example of the spontaneous combustion is, that is, coal mines. In coal mines, due to release of carbon particles, then this leads to, that is rapid combustion, that is complete combustion. Then spontaneous fires occurs, and also, that is, if you take the forest fires also leads to that is spontaneous combustion, because usually we try to do some activity in the forest, like making military camps, or some recreational camps. If you just place it there and we try to fire some logs of wood, and if you just leave that logs of wood like that only, then after a few seconds or after a few minutes, then these logs of woods, they create certain amount of spark, and this spark may lead to the unnecessary rapid fire, or it catches fire with the rest of the dry leaves or dry plants, the dry areas in that forest, and that leads to a huge fires catching up, and that leads to hundreds of kilometers destruction of the forest. And that is a big menace, particularly in where the dense forests are taking place. You might have heard in the news sometimes that Australia long back, some 5 or 10 years back, these forest fires they have faced many times, and it was very difficult for them to control the forest fires particularly. So even in the coal mines also, because of the enormous amount of coal exploration, you find that the carbon particles from the coal, they come out in the form of dust particles, that is aerosols. Aerosols are the fine particles of carbon. These fine particles of carbon, they have affinity for the atmospheric oxygen, and if small amount of spark is led in the form of heat, this spark catches the fire. This spark ignites the ignition temperature, and that leads to catching of fire for the carbon particles. And carbon particles, they produce large amount of heat and energy, and also light, and that leads to a very huge explosion which is uncontrollable. So all this leads to that is spontaneous combustion. If you go for rapid combustion, rapid combustion is particularly for the fuels which are in gases and also liquids. They can participate in that is rapid combustion. That is liquid petroleum gas is such area, and petrol you can take oil, cooking oil. There is a chance of rapid combustion. And if you something related to, if you go for complete combustion is such a way that the substance or the material is passed with sufficient amount of oxygen. Complete combustion indicates that, suppose if you are taking coal, and if coal is passed with the sufficient oxygen, then it gives us carbon dioxide gas it is going to give. So, and this gives large amount of energy. This is complete combustion. But on the other hand, if you take incomplete combustion, this is called partial oxidation. We can also call it as partial oxidation. In the partial oxidation, carbon solid in the form of coal, if you pass only half mole of gas of oxygen insufficient, then that leads to that is carbon monoxide gas. This carbon monoxide gas which is obtained, it is very poisonous. Actually, the obtained carbon monoxide, here if you take carbon monoxide gas is heavier than air. It is very poisonous, heavier than air, highly poisonous, and it interacts with the hemoglobin of the blood. Let Hb be the hemoglobin. The blood is red in color because of hemoglobin. It interacts with the hemoglobin, and it forms a heavier complex, a complexating agent. This is called carboxyhemoglobin. It is called carboxyhemoglobin. And once the carboxyhemoglobin is formed, this the person may lead to death, because this stops the blood circulation of the humans, and if the blood circulation stops, then the blood pressure drops and the person becomes unconscious, and within no time you can see that the person may lead to the death. That's why it is always recommended that in the highly populated cities, the concentration of the carbon monoxide gas is always brought down to the minimum permissible level, because if it exceeds the minimum permissible level, then that may lead to the air pollution, and because of that air pollution that may lead to a lot of unnecessary health problems for the humans, particularly in children. If the carbon monoxide concentration increases, then that leads to the symptoms of asthma. This is a very common problem in metros, particularly where the people are highly populated, and if you find an area very densely populated, and if there is no lung space within the city, in such area the carbon monoxide concentration just deposits in the upper layer, and when the humans they are exposed to more and more concentration, then that will give us a lot of ill health in the form of drowsiness, or asthma, or various respiratory problems, bronchitis. Many problems will arise because of the increase in the concentration of carbon monoxide. That is because of the incomplete combustion. So here the next topic under our discussion is flame. If you take flame is nothing but, what do you exactly mean by flame here? When you say flame is nothing but a form of heat in the form of energy and light. So which kind of substances actually that leads to the formation of flame? If you take substances chemical substances which supports combustion, and can produce large amount of heat, and light during combustion, we call it as, we just involve that this characteristics involves in the property of flame. So that means the best example what we can take is, we can take flame, means you can take flames can be produced by, that is, you can take kerosene, kerosene can give you a flame, then kerosene can give you a flame, petrol can give a flame, then oils can give a flame, so on and so forth. So what is happening here is, like if you take a flame, if you are taking a flame, if you are taking a flame, suppose if this is the flame, this is the outermost non-luminous flame. This is non-luminous flame, which is the hottest, and it has highest temperature. That means, for example, and in the middle region, you find that in the middle region, this is called, middle zone is luminous flame. So if you go to the outermost non-luminous flame, we call this as the hottest and the highest temperature zone, which gives a blue flame. So this portion, it always gives the blue flame, this is giving yellow flame, and this is innermost zone, that is called wax zone. This is the innermost zone, which we call it as wax zone. So suppose, for example, if I am taking a copper wire, and if I bring the copper wire with a tongue, if this is the copper wire, if you bring it to the edge of the non-luminous flame, after a few seconds you find that this copper wire turns to red color, becomes red heat, achieves the red color. Similarly, if you take a glass plate, you bring one glass plate, and if you place exactly in the middle of the non-luminous flame, this is the glass plate. After a few seconds, you remove the glass plate, then you find all the carbon particles, soot, or you can call it as smoke. That means unburnt wax particles or unburnt carbon particles, whatever they are present, that will be available in the form of small scar on the glass plate, that is called soot or smoke. And the innermost zone is the lowest temperature zone. This is the lowest or coldest zone, where the process of combustion do not take place. So these are the three areas where we have to keep it in mind. So innermost zone is called the unburned wax zone, and the middle zone is the partial combustion zone, and the outer zone is complete combustion zone, which is giving blue flame, and it is hottest. So this is completely the information which we can gather regarding the flame, and the substances which are participating in the, giving a flame, are the flame substances. Even in the chemistry laboratory also, for every substance whatever you are trying to analyze from that particular substance, you do the flame test. Some substances they give flame test, some substances they do not give flame test. The substances which immediately catches fire are combustible substances which supports the combustion, and the substances which do not support the combustion are non-combustible substances. For example, one small experiment what we can do is, like if you bring a burning matchstick near the carbon dioxide formation, suppose if I am subjecting carbon or coal to combustion gas, a carbon dioxide gas is formed, you bring a burning matchstick. If this is the burning matchstick, if I bring the burning matchstick, this burning matchstick is put off, because carbon dioxide is a non-supporter of combustion. Formation of carbon dioxide is a non-supporter. It is a non-supporter of combustion. Carbon dioxide is a non-supporter of combustion. So this is a simple experiment where we can prove that how the substances are combustible and how the substances are non-combustible, and how this combustion is indirectly involved with the flame of the substance, and how the flame has three components also we have studied. Suppose if you look into this table, what you are finding is candle, camphor, coal, magnesium ribbon and petrol. If you take, these are the 5 materials or 5 substances where they support the formation of flame or they do not support the formation of flame. If you take candle, yes, it supports the formation of flame, so we can make a cross here. And camphor also, yes, it supports the flame. And if you take coal, it only supports for few minutes or few seconds, but after that it does not support. So overall it does not support the flame. And magnesium ribbon, yes, it supports the flame. And if you take petrol, yes, highly it supports the flame. Camphor and candle, they highly support the flame. So therefore we can say that in this way we can analyze and we can clearly understand which substances actually supports the formation of flame and which substances do not support the formation of flame. Can be studied through this tabular form, so that we can easily make an analysis of the substances showing the luminous flames, non-luminous flames and flame properties of the given substances. So here the next part of the discussion is, that is fuels. So what are fuels? Fuels are nothing but the substances on heating or subjected to combustion produce large amount of heat and energy. Produce large amount of heat and energy. Substances which on heating and combustion produces large amount of heat and energy are called fuels. These are called fuels. The efficiency of fuels depends on its calorific value. Efficiency of a fuel depends on its calorific value, where the calorific value is expressed in calorific value. What do you exactly mean by calorific value? Calorific value is nothing but the amount of energy, heat and light produced. The amount of heat and light is optional, but heat compulsory, it has to produced, expressed in kilojoules per meter cube. Kilojoules per meter cube is termed as calorific value. So what do you exactly mean by, actually the calorific value also can be understood in the terms as the amount of heat produced by burning 1 gram of substance through 1 degree centigrade is also called as heat capacity, which is expressed in terms of calorific value. So efficiency of fuels, which is depending on the calorific value, also depends upon types of fuels. Efficiency also depends on types of fuels. If you take types of fuels, that is A, solid fuel, B, liquid fuel, C, gaseous fuel. So if you take solid fuel, wood, charcoal, wood and charcoal are the best examples of solid fuel, but they release large amount of smoke with less calorific value. Liquid fuels like petrol, diesel, liquid petroleum gas, which is obtained from fractional distillation. FD stands for fractional distillation of petroleum products. We can obtain from fractional distillation of petroleum products. We can obtain LPG. They emit less smoke. So last one is gaseous fuels. If we take compressed natural gas, propane, butane, which are present in both these gases are present in LPG cylinders. They are smokeless and have high calorific value. They are smokeless and they have high calorific value. So that means it is very clear that efficiency, so gaseous fuels wins over the liquid fuels wins over the solid fuels in terms of the consumption. This is what you have to keep it in your mind. Gaseous fuels wins over liquid fuels and liquid fuels wins over the solid fuels. So this is some of the important information where we can carry out for the fuels and its efficiency and its types, and whether it is emitting more smoke or less smoke, and what amount of calorific value the fuel is able to give also we can find out from this. So if you look into this table in particular, you can see that cow dung cake is a solid fuel, and coal is solid fuel, petrol, kerosene, diesel, these three are liquid fuels. Methane and compressed natural gas, of course biogas and hydrogen, these are all gaseous fuels. So what you are noticing here is, if you take which is the best fuel among this, obviously the gaseous fuel is the best, because if you see the calorific value also, for hydrogen if you take, it is having the calorific value equal to 15 into 10 to the power of 4 kilojoules per kg or kilojoules per cubic meter, whatever, because 1 kg 1000 grams you can take, kilojoules per kg also you can take. So what is happening here is, like, gaseous fuels always have more advantage than liquid and the solid fuels, because gaseous fuels does not have the ability to release smoke. They are smokeless and they have high calorific value, and they can be compressed into any container, and it is easy for us to transport the gaseous fuels from one place to another place. The transportation problem never arises, storing problem never arises. Then it can be compressed to, as much amount of gas can be compressed in a given container. Then it is smokeless, it is easy to handle. All these are the advantages of the gaseous fuels over the liquid and solid fuels. So if you take particularly the fuel which is having the least calorific value, you find that it is cow dung, salt cake, and the highest calorific value is for hydrogen. So that means it is very clear that it is advantageous for us to always use the gaseous fuels. Now, what are the adverse effects? What are the consequences of heavy consumption? Consequences of heavy consumptions of fuels. When these fuels are consumed heavily, that means if they are burnt, that is partial, these gaseous fuels, whatever is the fuel, when it is subjected to combustion, partial combustion, It is subjected to partial combustion that leads to the poisonous gases. Poisonous gases. When I say poisonous gases, what are the poisonous gases? These poisonous gases are, that is CO of X, comma, SO of X, comma, NO of X. These are called oxides of carbon, comma, sulfur, and comma, nitrogen. C stands for carbon, S stands for sulfur, and N stands for nitrogen. So these are very dangerous. These are very dangerous oxides in the adverse effects of the pollution, because they lead to a lot of air pollution. Actually, they lead to a lot of air pollution. These causes air pollution. They lead to air pollution. For example, if you take the oxides of carbon in particular, if you are taking the oxides of carbon, that is carbon monoxide, comma, carbon dioxide. Carbon monoxide causes respiratory problems. And carbon dioxide is responsible for increase of temperature. It is responsible for climatic change. It is also responsible for global warming. Increase of the concentration of carbon dioxide as a result of increase in the temperature of the atmosphere, then that will lead to global warming. Because of the global warming, you find that particularly the countries which are very close to the coastal areas, countries which are close to oceans, gets inundated. Particularly in the Asian countries, like if you take India is surrounded by a coastal belt, in particular south states like Karnataka, then you can take Tamil Nadu, and you can take Goa, okay, then Kerala. These are all coastal belts. So when there is a severe increase in the carbon dioxide concentration, that will lead to increase in the temperature. When there is increase in the temperature, there is a climatic change. When there is a climatic change, you will see that suddenly there is a rise in the oceanic level, and that may lead to the epicenter of the water cyclonic effects in the form of tsunami, and all that are the consequences of global warming. And global warming is having a severe disastrous effect, particularly for the countries which are very close to the oceans. Then if you go for oxides of sulfur, if you take these oxides of sulfur in particular, if you take oxides of sulfur dioxide, sulfur trioxide, these results in acid rain. It will decrease the fertility of the soil, decrease the fertility of the soil. The pH of the soil becomes much lesser than 3.5. It becomes acidic, corrosive, and the plants will die, and even the water gets polluted, and that will lead to acid rain. Then oxides of nitrogen, these oxides of nitrogen are the emissive particles. These are the particle emissions. Which results coming from jet planes. These particles, they go and struck in the stratosphere or the atmosphere, and they try to deplete the ozone layer. As a result, what is happening? Because of the ozone layer depletion, you find that the harmful radiations from the sun, which are UV radiations. Sun is made up of UV radiations. These UV radiations are actually protected by O3 layer. This is the ozone layer. But once this ozone layer keeps depleting, ozone holes are produced in between. Because of ozone holes, the UV radiations passes directly to the surface of the earth, and that will result in, this is the surface of the earth, and that will result in very harmful impacts like skin cancer. When the UV rays directly reach the earth, that will result in the formation of skin cancer, then leukemia, blood cancer, something like that. And that is, you find there some kind of skin sensitive diseases or something like that. All these kind of adverse effects we can see once the air pollutants increases in the atmosphere. So thereby we have to ensure ourselves that we have to control our renewable sources, whatever we have. We have to cut off the excessive consumption of the fuels to a maximum extent and protect the environment, protect the forestation, protect the environment, control the fuels. Thereby we can also protect the ozone layer present in the stratosphere of the atmosphere, so that to a maximum extent we can save the planet Earth. So here is a small question related to the combustion and flame, that is related to the fuel. What he says in the question is, in an experiment 4.5 kg of fuel was completely burnt. The heat produced was measured to be that is 180,000 kilojoules. Calculate the calorific value of the fuel. So we know that when we are discussing about the calorific value of the fuel, we know that the calorific value, let me put it in this way, calorific value of fuel is expressed, because calorific value of fuel is expressed in kilojoules per kg. This also means that 1 kg of fuel, let me put it in this way, 1 kg of fuel contains, that is 1 kg of fuel is always gives an energy equal to 1 kilojoules of energy. Let us say like this. So keeping that relationship in our mind, so what we can do here is kilojoules per kg. So here he says kilojoules, he is saying that kilojoules, and that is actually in an experiment 4.5 kg of fuel was completely burnt. The heat produced was measured to be 18,000 kilojoules. So let me put it in this way. Since 18,000 kilojoules of energy is produced from 180,000 kilojoules of heat is produced by burning 4.5 kg of fuel. 4.5 kg fuel. By burning 4.5 kg of fuel, we could get 180,000 kilojoules of heat. So suppose if I put this in the scientific form, this also means that 18 into 10 to the power of 4 kilojoules of heat was produced by burning 4.5 kilojoules of fuel. So because we should always calculate the calorific value in terms of 1 kg of fuel, so equate 4.5 with 1.0 kg of fuel corresponds to how many kilojoules? So this is going to become, apply the numerical method, this is going to become 18 into 10 to the power of 4 into 1.0 divided by 4.5. So this is going to become, this is nothing but, if you take here, this is, we can take 18 into 10 to the power of 4 divided by 45, because if I remove the decimal in the denominator, in the numerator you could get one more 10 to the power of 1. So this step is going to become 18 by 45 into 10 to the power of 5. Then I think it will go in 9 table, 9 2s are 9 5s are 45. So this is 2 by 5 into 10 to the power of 5. So this is going to become 0.4 into 10 to the power of 5. So ultimately, if you multiply 10 to the power of 5 with 0.4, 4 into 10 to the power of 4, that is kilojoules per kg of calorific value. Calorific value is obtained from the fuel.